Hello, and welcome back to the Jason Sellers Politics Podcast. It's been a while since the last episode, over 2 years, in fact, but I'm coming out with 5 new episodes. This is part one. I'll be interviewing 5 Minneapolis Park Board candidates. If you're unaware, the Park Board is also elected at the same time as the City Council, and the convention is this Saturday, July 19th, I guess next Saturday, because it is Saturday right now. There are 6 Park Board districts as opposed to 13 city council wards, as well as 3 at-large seats on the Minneapolis Park Board. I'll be interviewing 3 at-large candidates and 2 District 1 candidates, which is the district I live in, incumbent Billy Menz and challenger Dan Engelhart. And for at-large, I'll be interviewing incumbent Tom Olson and then Adam Schneider and Michael Wilson, who you are about to see now. We have a good interview. We talk about parks, my concerns as a park employee, both in Minneapolis and now in St. Paul. He brings his public health background as well. So enjoy. I'm working on the production quality. It's been a while. I'm using a new webcam. Um, Microphone's also from the webcam, so hopefully it's not too far away. And then I'm trying to figure out my lighting. It wasn't very good this episode. It kept kind of shifting. I would hit it sometimes. And you can see as the glasses go up. I also got a haircut, which is why I have this hat on. It's a little too short to have on camera. I also did have one embarrassing moment where my dog Baker was barking in the background, so I thought I should mute myself. And then I kept saying unmute, unmute, unmute. And then when I started talking, I forgot to unmute and he called me out. So I'll edit that a little bit. And then one more note, he does mention Jim Lupient Water Park in Northeast Minneapolis, but does say North Minneapolis, which I'm sure he meant Northeast, because that's what Jim Lupient is, and that's where I live as well. A few caveats before we get into the interview. I try to ask the same questions for each candidate as not to skew it in any direction. And then I was running out of time today, so I did kind of combine the last 2 questions and it did kind of run out of answers, which is something that isn't very professional on my part, but I can't afford to pay for Zoom Premium. And I'll try to upload these kind of right after each other, so there's no chance of one coming out and then the other one not coming out for 3 days or so. I am a delegate at the city convention. I'll mention that as well. But I am trying to be fair and unbiased in these interviews, although I think I might know who I'm supporting at this point. So enjoy my interview with Michael Wilson, candidate for Minneapolis Park Board at Large, running for the DFL endorsement this Saturday. Again, well, when you're watching this, when it comes out, it will be this Saturday, July 19th. Enjoy. Hello.
Jason, how's it going?
It's going good.
All right, cool, cool. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, excited to start doing this again. I've got 5 different interviews with 5 different park board candidates scheduled for the next few days. So excited
Oh,
to
nice.
get them all up and get ready for the convention.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Yeah, this is pretty cool format. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'll just start with a brief introduction of myself. My name is Jason. I'm a resident in Northeast Minneapolis, with District 1 on the park board. And I also work in Parks and Rec. I've worked in Parks and Rec for about a year and 2 months now, both at Minneapolis and St. Paul. And local politics is something I've been passionate about for quite a few years now, and um, that's hence the podcast, right?
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, how about let's just give yourself a little introduction and your relationship with Minneapolis. Are you from here, or did you move here?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm Michael Wilson. I'm running for Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board at Large, and I'm not originally from Minneapolis. I've been here for about 10 years, a little over 10 years,
Mhm.
I think. I'm originally from Wisconsin, moved around a whole bunch, but yeah, been in Minneapolis for 10 years, and yeah, I kind of fell in love with Minneapolis when I moved here. Actually, I started working at the park board as well, not too long after I moved here, and we brag about our parks a lot in Minneapolis. We have an excellent park system. And that was a really great introduction to the city and really fell in love with our parks in Minneapolis as a joint venture. So yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the first question and kind of the biggest, reason for running a campaign is what experience do you have that's going to be relevant to the park and recreation policy in terms as opposed to other positions.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have pretty much my entire career in outdoor recreation and public health. I guess kind of going down my resume here of different careers I've had. I used to teach sailing at the Chesapeake Bay at a YMCA camp for a couple summers. I was a wilderness ranger at the here. I was a wilderness ranger intern at the Huron-Manistee National Forest. I was a hiking and climbing guide on the Matanuska Glacier in Alaska for a while. That was pretty great. And then like, after that, I went to grad school at St. Cloud State for a master's program in geography with an emphasis on tourism planning and development. And you know when and through a lot of my like high school, college, and grad school times, I was working as a lifeguard in aquatics, and I kind of continued that when I moved to Minneapolis after grad school. And yeah, I ended up getting a job with Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and was a site supervisor of Jim Lupiant Water Park in North Minneapolis, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And yeah, you know, I love working at our water parks, and I ended up getting promoted and was directly implementing MPRB aquatics programs throughout the MPRB system at all the water parks, pools, and beaches. You know, after a while, I realized that I wanted to kind of I was getting a little bit older, not as active as I once was in my younger years, and I wanted a role with like some more stability. I wanted my nights and weekends back and stuff like that. So I started a career in grant management. And that's how I ended up where I am now at the University of Minnesota in the School of Public Health. I manage federal grants. I help a lot of the researchers and faculty there like prepare grant proposals and budgets for public health grants for like NIH, NSF, and other sponsors like that. So I think like all these you know experiences kind of fold together for like my career wise. I guess like it's kind of funny. I'm campaigning, and sometimes these things like feel like a job interview, but also like there's a lot of me too that's like kind of in and around my job experiences, like things like community organizing that I've done in the East Phillips neighborhood. I actually one of my grandmothers was the first woman elected to the park board in her municipality in Glenview, Illinois, and I kind of grew up hearing stories about like really great responsible adults in their community serving on the park board, and so that has been always instilled in me. And I'm very much like a Parks and Rec kind of guy, and so it's a pretty natural fit to be doing this myself here.
Yeah, I think as I've already preluded, I am an employee for Park and in the rec center, and parks have also been something I've been passionate about because I grew up in parks, just like so many Minneapolis residents, whether it's playing sports, being in the rec center, open gym. Friday night open gym was quite a weekly tradition for a while for us. So,
Okay,
um,
that sounds good.
one of the biggest themes in Minneapolis politics for the past however many years, but especially since the murder of George Floyd, has been public safety. How
Mhm.
can the park board take a preventative approach to public safety? There's been a lot of studies, a lot of papers, a lot of just evidence that getting things right when kids are kids and growing up and having a place to go prevents that crime when they're older and gets them people they trust, communities they trust. So how can the park board take a preventative approach, especially with youth programming, the quality and the quantity of it?
Yeah, yeah. You know, I feel like pretty congruent being able to speak to this too. You know, as a long career as a lifeguard and a lifeguard manager, so much of lifeguarding is prevention of emergencies, and you know, it's right in the name, lifeguarding. And I think that like when we talk about when these conversations about like public safety beyond policing, you know, I think taking a public health approach to a lot of crime and like you know crime issues in our city, you know, prevention is huge, and like one thing that is really apparent to me is that our public spaces are safest when people are using them and building community there. I often like to cite some really great studies on public skate parks where, like, contrary to some narratives that I grew up with like way younger, like in the 90s and stuff, that like they're you know skate park like the people who are using skate parks our skate parks are like you know doing crime or like some bad actors or whatever. Like crime actually goes down wherever there's a public skate park because you know people in the skate community take care of each other and they know each other and they build those relationships, and that reduces violent crime, and like, everyone's better off for that. And so I think you know that's kind of I'm very much of the approach of like you know all of us getting out to like build relationships and use our parks together and like having that be like a community space that reduces crime and makes them safer. There's definitely a role for our park police, our park patrol agents, the street reach crew at MPRB does some great intervention and
Mhm.
de-escalation. I think that's really great. But I think a huge thing that kind of interweaves with a lot of this is um, reducing the amount of turnover for frontline staff at our park system, whether it be like in recreation, our youth programs, aquatics, pretty much. I mean, actually, even like in our forestry department, it's really important that I was talking to a forester recently who will go into the community in which he's working, and he knows people by name, and like those kind of community relationships. Like having long lasting like strong relationships where people are working, living, and loving, that really does like reduce crime, whether it's like a sports coach, lifeguard. And I think people naturally want to take care of each other that we know, and kind of shifting some of these, like shifting our approach to some of these roles as like a temporary part-time position that only lasts 3 months and then see you later or see you never, maybe see your younger sibling for 3 months in the future, to like a approach where our frontline full-time and or part-time staff are like real community relationship builders, and that's worth investing in to improve public safety and build those relationships.
Yeah, I think relationships is kind of the best part of my job. I know in my current position, I could be moved to a rec center pretty much at the drop of a hat, and it would be hard to have to rebuild those, especially with the kids that I've gotten to know. And um, my older brother,
Yeah.
one of my older brothers was also a skateboarder, and he didn't have a lot of public places to go. There's some indoor skate parks in the neighborhood, and he'd have to try to skate where he could in Northeast and downtown. And I think there's definitely a stigma of skateboarders, causing trouble. And if they had a skate park, they wouldn't be causing trouble on the streets because they'd have somewhere to skate.
Yeah, exactly. Which I saw in the long-term plan actually. This is jogging my memory that there was going to be a skate park right next to Jim Lupian Water Park where
Mhm.
there was a mini golf course
Yeah.
there. Um, I don't know what the timeline is about that skate park. Maybe I don't know if you know anything more about that, but yeah.
And also in terms of public safety, this is kind of an idea that I was thinking about when I worked at the Minneapolis Parks is park sponsored safety initiatives so that we can help our own neighbors. When I was at the park board, I was thinking about what if we had a table booth, a table or tents, a certain day over the week or just once or twice that gave out trainings and signed up people up for trainings that had incentives, gift cards. I know at my current position, we all have to take CPR and first aid training, and they actually do not want us to take Narcan training, at least not city-sponsored Narcan training, because if there's an incident with somebody acting combative after they've been treated, they don't want to be liable for that. Um, so how could the park board offer that? Would you support something like that? Some park-sponsored free community uh, resource engagement educations.
Yeah, and I recognize that there are some inherent limitations to what the park board can do because like
Yeah.
it's not like a healthcare provider, and we don't really have
Yep.
like in the traditional sense, and so like there are some reasonable things that we need to work around, I guess, with that.
Mhm.
But we can certainly partner with organizations, and I think like doing like pop-up Narcan trainings like in partnership with like the other like there's some really good organizations that are experts in different harm reduction approaches, and definitely some pop-ups in our park could be really informative and helpful for a lot of folks. I know there was a situation recently actually where a neighborhood organization was trying to get MPRB to allow harm reduction kiosks in like on a park property, and MPRB didn't allow it. And I'm trying to remember, like the reasoning was something along the lines of like possibly sending the wrong message. And I think that like a harm reduction data-driven approach to like people using yucky drugs in our parks is something that we need to take seriously. when we have like our rec staff picking up needles and and folks who are not really trained, that puts a lot of burden on not only park users but our staff who like are not trained to do it. And so we get into a situation where like we're not wanting to train our staff in Narcan, but regardless of whether or not we do that, we live in a world in which some of our parks there are people who are using those drugs, and we do have our frontline staff being confronted with those situations anyway. And I think it's really important that like we don't just try to, make it go away by ignoring it, but like be proactive and like understand that there's like a public health approach and harm reduction approach, and partner with the right people to like have the right expertise. Um, this is jogging my memory a little bit because back when I worked at the park board in the summer of 2020, obviously there's a lot going on the summer of 2020, and I remember one of the things there was a lot of like shake up to what park staff were doing in a lot of ways, and it was a little bit chaotic. I think everyone was doing the best they could, and it was tough. But I remember I pitched to some of my supervisors that people like me who were doing a lot of like training of lifeguards and like training our lifeguard staff to have lifeguard certifications, CPR, AED, basic life supports, and first aid. That like since we weren't doing our normal kind of program delivery, we could be doing like pop-up trainings for like first aid in our parks. That pitch didn't end up going anywhere, and there I get it. Like there was a lot going on. Like no decision was easy around then, so whatever. But I still think that was a neat idea, and I'm open to, a more creative delivery of some of those like basic first aid services. But especially partnering with I mean, I know like Native American Community Clinic, Mother's Love, Southside Harm Reduction Services. There are people with more expertise that would be good to partner with and explore what that could look like for us in a way that like we're not trying to be a healthcare provider, but also like living in the real world with what is actually going on in our parks and putting people in a position to succeed.
Yeah, I know a couple of years ago I was speaking with Council President Payne, and he had mentioned there's an initiative to try to get a use kind of education website going or something like that. And there definitely is a fight against it because people think it'll encourage more drug use, and it's actually more of a harm reduction approach instead of encouraging people to do more drugs
Yeah.
is what the argument is against it.
Yeah, and like it's one of those things that like there is really good data on that, and I think that we should have like a common sense data driven approach and a public health approach, and just like assuming that having a harm reduction kiosk will encourage more drug use. The data doesn't support that. Like I'm it's a I'm not really sure what else to say about it. The data just doesn't support it, and we should move forward with eyes wide open.
Yeah, and I think this is my last question on public safety. It's also kind of a public health question. There's been a lot of coverage on unhoused people in our parks, whether it's in a full encampment, or just somebody, looking for a place to sit that, hasn't been able to rest for a while. So what approach would you take to provide for these community members while also balancing the safety and comfort of families and other park goers who are valid? It's valid to be concerned when you have kids and you see somebody who looks concerning nearby.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great question. And I know that was a really big theme the last NPRB election cycle. I actually lived right next to Powderhorn Park around then when there was like some really big encampments and it was a really big issue. I haven't seen it come up in NPRB stuff lately. I think there's not really a whole lot of encampments on park property lately, but like, um, it is still a thing and it will be a thing in the future. Like I don't think I don't think our housing crisis is getting measurably better right now. It's really tough. And it's something that we need to, be aware of. And we live, MPRB is a key player in our intergovernmental pantheon of government agencies. I'm a big believer in a housing first public health approach to unsheltered homelessness. And I know that MPRB is not a housing provider, and like we don't have the resources and staff and stuff to like really meaningfully address the housing crisis. And it's apparent to anyone who's been paying attention that the city has been really proficient in telling our unhoused neighbors where they cannot be, but is not following it up with telling people where they can be. There's not enough shelter beds. Despite what Jacob Fry might say, there are a lot more than 27 people who are unhoused in our city. And it's apparent to anyone who's like in our parks, for example. And our city approach just doesn't really add up right now. It's expensive, it's not humane, it's just not effective. And I think that MPRB does have a role to play. Even though we're not a housing provider, like we do have a role because like what what we have is land and relationships. And I want to be careful with how I talk about this because like, it's a sticky situation. Um, because we're very far away from like even beginning to get this right in terms of how the park board approaches this network of government agencies. But I would really like to begin exploring like with MPRB staff and our partners at the city, the county, the state, and other levels. If there are parcels of land that we do have that are not connected to any typical type of park and recreation use, that could potentially be used as a place where homeless folks can be without an encampment sweep. I think we do have a crisis about it, and it's all hands on deck. We can't be cagey about it. We need to step up where we like. The MPRB is the largest landowner in Minneapolis, and it seems unreasonable for us to act like we don't have a role to play. And I think MPRB should be at the table in the conversation with the city, state, county, and talk about what that could look like for us. I mean, obviously, we don't want to be having homeless encampments on our beaches, in playgrounds, on ball fields, but MPRB is the largest landholder in Minneapolis, and I find it highly unlikely that a solution cannot be found in close partnership with other folks who are more able to do that kind of service delivery.
Yeah, I know this question has been really important for me in the last year or so, just with a couple instances I had, and maybe this is something that can be part of the staff training and more staff preparedness. But I know there's one time last year at the park I was working at where there's a guy who just wanted a burger to be bought for him because he was diabetic and was elderly, um, and I couldn't do it, and I felt like if I did do it, I'd get in trouble, and I would be doing it on the clock, and I didn't know how to help the guy, and I called my supervisor, and he was upset that I called somebody else and walked off. And then just a couple weeks ago at my current job, there was a guy on the security camera who was taking his shirt off and taking his shoes off and sitting in the shade and plugging his phone into an outdoor outlet and getting some water. And then he went and sat under the slide on the playground because he just needed some shade. And somebody went and yelled at him because he was sitting next to kids. And that's where that balance comes in. And I felt bad because, they're talking about, there's, another weirdo coming near the rec center. And I was like, he's just looking for some water and some shade. And it's hard to have that empathy and also, try to keep the area safe. So I think staff preparedness is a big aspect of that as well.
Yeah, yeah, and it's tough because like it's a policy failure at multiple levels of government that like when it often shows up in our third spaces if someone has nowhere else to go because of policy failures at all these other levels it shows up as if it's a park issue but as you know it's a very wide issue and
Mhm.
um it takes all hands on deck to be addressing it.
And then yeah, so shifting to a different subject, and this would be public health related as well as um, what steps can the park board take to continue to fight against the climate crisis and for cleaner air and cleaner water, which feels very relevant today because if you're listening and not aware, it is very smoky outside.
Yeah, yeah, it is really smoky. Actually, I had a door knock earlier with Robin Wansley's campaign, and we were going to do an outside door knock, but we switched it to indoors. And because yeah, we went to an apartment building, which was great because I think that's people in apartments need green space more than anybody, arguably.
Mhm.
But yeah, even a little bit of time, kind of feeling raspy. It's tough out there. But yeah, in terms of like climate efficiency, climate justice, Park Board has a lot of big roles to play. I mean, the chain of lakes is the largest stormwater management tool in the city, and making sure that we're not that we're treating our our public waters with respect and not like polluting them with pesticides, I think is an important thing for me. I'm really in favor of having solar panels on park buildings, like we do at Parade Ice Garden. I think that that's great over there. And even if like having some renewable energy sources in small ways on some smaller parks. It's really good education for kiddos who are out there and like, any small step that we can take towards like a carbon zero park system is the right step. And, some of these things, may feel a little bit performative. And that's fine. I think that it's good to be signaling to our younger generation that we're taking this seriously and like this is what it is. Like one of the things at Parade Ice Garden, not only is there a huge solar array, but there's a really nice like interpretive set of signs about like what is this, like what is going on here, how much does this generate, and like raising public awareness and consciousness about like what we can do, what we are doing now, what more we need to do. I think that there's a huge educational aspect that the MPRB has a role in and is doing good in some ways, and we should continue. Um, I'm definitely a huge supporter of prioritizing investment in our forestry workers. We have the largest urban tree canopy in the entire country, and it's amazing and it's a treasure, and we should show that we treasure it with our budgetary decisions. And yeah, I think that's really important to me as well. Yeah, let's see. There's an area that I don't know a lot of right now in terms of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. Um, from what I gather, Minnehaha Creek Watershed District has a really big role to play in determining what kind of park and recreation options we have downstream here in South Minneapolis. And yeah, I guess in a lot of ways, I'm curious about like what what role we can play upstream in that kind of intergovernmental body. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that. I'm curious to hear more about it. And that's one of the things I'm excited. One of the great things about running for park board is that like our park system is so big and touches so many things, is that it's like a great, I feel like I know a lot of things about a lot of things, but I'm always learning more. And yeah, it's pretty great. Um, I am tempted to go on a super long tangent probably about like carbon offset credits, but I guess I'll just, leave it at, I think the best way to grow our urban tree canopy is watering our trees when we plant them and investing in the only people who are planting, and watering, and pruning our trees. I'm alarmed that we're many years behind tree pruning right now. And we need a forestry staff that is well compensated, has good working conditions, and are well staffed enough to do the job that the largest urban tree canopy requires.
Yeah, when you mentioned having that signage and little educational for kids, those tools, it reminded me just a little family shout out for myself is part of the reason I got into politics and was inspired to try to do stuff in my community is my grandpa, who's probably 50 feet away from me right now, less than that, was on the Audubon Neighborhood Association, and he kind of piloted a initiative to get a rain garden by Northeast Middle School. And
Oh
that
yeah,
took a
nice.
couple of years and it popped up and has some signs explaining what everything does. And it's just been an inspiration to try to help people and help the community and help the climate. Northeast Middle School is right next to St. Anthony Parkway, which transitions well to my next question about protecting people, bikers, pedestrians, transit on parkways and other park-owned properties. And would you support parkways being closed, whether it be full-time or part-time, to vehicles?
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the main like policy platform things that I talk about in my stump speech and all kinds of things is I'm really in favor of public transportation options on our parkways and traffic calming on our parkways as well. I live pretty close to to West River Parkway, and there's a lot of cars who dangerously exceed 20 miles an hour on our parkways. And I think I'm in favor of traffic calming measures and having some public transportation on our parkways. Currently, you can take a bus to Theodore Wirth, and I've been digging. I haven't been able to find another parkway that has any bus routes associated with it. But yeah, I guess kind of an interesting aspect that's always I feel like it's always hidden within like the open parkways, closed parkways thing is that like a lot of our parkways in the summertime are closed to cars pretty regularly in the summer, for things like the Minnesota Food Truck Festival's coming up. There's like triathlons, other runs and events. And closing our parkways to cars is a very common thing that happens all the time. And it's interesting to me sometimes when, I get into this conversation because it's very much treated as a binary. And I think that there's some very pro car people that like have a very strong aversion to any kind of policy that would like limit cars or limit parking in any way. And I think that I not only I think that's a little bit, antiquated thinking. I understand that like cars and parking have a role to play in the suite of options for accessibility to our parks. Absolutely, I get that. But it is like a fact of how our parks exist right now that our parkways are close to cars all the time. And I think that's good. I think everyone agrees that that's a great recreational use of our parks. I know that each parkway is different and there's different local demands on how folks use our parkways at different areas and different times. And I don't think that a one size fits all approach to like having them all of a sudden all close to cars. I don't think that's the right approach either. I'm really in favor of like gathering data and doing pilot studies about opening up our parkways. I think Tom Olson speaks to this well, that unlike many of our disappointment about how the current board scuttled a pilot study on West River Parkway that would have like produced exactly this kind of data that I'm talking about here. Um, I am curious behind the motives of why that pilot study was scuttled. It was not that expensive. I think it was it was like right on the heels of something that many people thought was pretty popular. But yeah, I mean the decision to, have parkways open in 2020, I think a lot of people responded pretty positively to. And I'm really interested in continuing to learn more about how people feel about that and on their local parkway so we can better assess and use our parks in the best recreational way.
That's right. Yep, the dog was barking. Yeah, it's hard to find that balance because I know there's a lot of people, such as myself, who have to rely on a car to get places. And for a couple of years, I've been saying, I wish I biked more. I wish I took the bus more. And I took the bus downtown a lot when I was working at the park board. But now that I work in St. Paul, it's harder. And my grandpa had a wood shop just until recently that was on the other side of St. Anthony Parkway, and it's St. Anthony Parkway around the golf course is really steep hill. And
Mhm.
he could bike to it. And somebody who isn't an experienced biker, I could not. I'd usually have to give up and just walk my bike for a good portion of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think, I think you speak to it well that like having options like some days in some areas like it works. Sometimes, I mean, we're dynamic people, and um yeah, I think having different options is the right way to move forward. Our state legislature, want like it passed a thing and made a commitment that in our state we're going to reduce the amount of vehicles of vehicle miles traveled by 20% by 2050. And we all have a role to play in that. And it's not like we need to all be taking the bus everywhere all the time. That's not realistic right now, but like, weaving it into our lives how we can. It's great.
yeah, all right. So I got about 10 minutes on my Zoom here because I don't pay for Zoom Premium. So I'll try
Oh
to
yeah.
get these last two quickly. Last year, a lot of the park workers that are represented by Laguna 363 went on strike. And what priorities would you have for employees to better their lives, and how would you achieve them?
Yeah. Oh man, I should have saved my long-windedness for this one, but I'll keep it brief. Yeah, I'm really interested in fair bargaining with our unions in good faith and reducing turnover of our frontline staff, as I said before, both for like full-time and part-time employees. When I was a MPRB employee, actually, I organized with my coworkers to form the first full-time lifeguards union. And so like not only like being a worker there, but like union dynamics there has been close to my heart for a long time. That's a big impetus for me to run, um when the strike happened and it was more on the public consciousness, I was like, hey, I think I'm in the right place at the right time. And sure enough. But yeah, especially as the largest youth employer in the city, it's really important to support a very high standard of workers' rights and protections of the park board, and that takes both like internal organizational commitment, like within MPRB, as well as good faith, fair bargaining with our union representation. Um, yeah, huge supporter of Lane 363. I'm really honored to be endorsed by them, and yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I know Dan Englehart running in District 1 is a very, very union guy, and he was also a lifeguard, I found out. So,
Oh, I didn't
um,
know that. Yeah.
so then, yeah, I'll combine this question. So part of why I like doing the podcast, I like trying to be politically active, is a lot of people, especially my age, don't know about local politics, what the park board does or what the city council does. So how do your campaign, go about community outreach and engagement, and how will you continue that while in the office? And then I'll combine that with this question: is how will you advocate for what the community members need on the park board with other agencies, this state legislators, city council, Hennepin County, Met Council.
Yeah, great question. So, um, when people are running for office and stuff, like there's like different measures of what success looks like. Obviously, a key measure of success is like winning the election. I was really passionate from the get-go about how we needed to raise the public discourse about like literacy about park board issues. Like a lot of people, it's very unique that Minneapolis has an elected park board that's like a semi-autonomous branch of government. It's kind of complicated. It's kind of down ballot. It's kind of niche. Not a lot of people know about it, but it has a very outsized amount of power in our city. Like the MPRB president sits on the Board of Estimate and Taxation, one of 6 seats that decides a lot of things about our tax and infrastructure here, and a lot of other things. It carries a lot of weight. And it is really important. And so, like not only do I intend to win the election, but I am very grateful that already my campaign has been very successful in raising the level of public discourse on on MPRB issues. I announced my campaign last November, and I am treating this like almost like someone running for Minneapolis City Council, and like in terms of like my website, my fundraising, my ability to get like endorsements, and I'm door knocking more than any park board candidate ever has, possibly combined, and it's a joy. It's really great, and I think like since I announced in November, I have noticed that the quality of park board candidacies is higher than it ever has been. I mean, it's I think this cycle, both because of like the labor stuff, my camp, like a lot of things have kind of come together, and I'm not going to take credit for all of it, but like I think I'm definitely part of a movement to make park board more on people's radar, and that's fantastic. I have done like I think 7 or 8 joint door knocks so far, and it's not even the DFL convention yet, with like 60 to 70 like different volunteers knocking on people's doors. That never happens in park board elections, and it's so great. I'm learning so much as well. Like I always come to the like event, like to like podcasts like this and on people's doors, and when I'm making phone calls, I come with a bunch of information and research that I've done, but I always walk away learning more. And that's exactly how we need to be practicing democracy. It's an iterative, dialectical thing, and that's one of the reasons that I'm running my campaign this way, is because like, well, organized people beat organized money every day of the week when you do it right. But also I want to demonstrate to people in Minneapolis that like this is the kind of person that I am, this is the kind of candidate that I am, and this is the kind of commissioner that I'll be. I really want to talk with everybody, even if especially if someone agrees with me on everything, that's crazy. And so like especially talking to people who we have different perspectives and different, that's how we grow, that's how we sharpen, and that's how we like make our park system in our city something that works for all of us. And that's the kind of commissioner I'm really excited to be.
I know that in a lot of the recent Wedge Live episodes, which I'm looking forward to the sailing episode, um, John Edwards talks about how the park board's 2 notches more conservative than the city council, partially because it's controlled by people who have parks in their backyards, and um, it's more hyper local because people who think they're going to be the most affected by it um, are the ones with properties near the parks, and in reality, it does affect everybody. Um, So yeah, before you go, just give, why people should vote for you, your little elevator pitch, and then any parting messages.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I'm really interested to hear the Wedge Lab podcast too, because like say it was kind of windy that day, and I wasn't. I was thinking about a lot of other things, but so hopefully it went okay. We'll see. But yeah, let's see. So I guess like I'm Michael Wilson, running for Park Board at Large, and oh, a big reason that I'm running because I want our parks to serve all people in Minneapolis, and a lot of what that looks like is strengthening and expanding, and like really having a strong commitment to the investment that we have already made in our youth programs like Rec Plus, preschool childcare, and God willing, expanding preschool childcare. I think that's really important right now. We need to make Minneapolis a destination for young working families and a great place to raise your kids. Supporting frontline workers and fair bargaining with our unions is really important to me. Frontline worker stability is community stability. We see from our national parks to our neighborhood parks that, this is the right time to be standing firm in support of our frontline park workers that make all this happen. I'm really passionate about better transit connections to our parks and calming traffic on our parkways. And I'm going into this with eyes wide open. I know it's not an easy job. It's like part-time, quote unquote. And while it's difficult, but I'm not going into this like on an island alone. I'm coalition building, and yeah, I'm really building a lot of relationships with like community members, people at the state legislature, city council, and folks across the city. And we do this together. None of us can make this park system great on their own. And yeah, democracy takes all of us, and that's what I'm here to be doing.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you so much for your time and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, that sounds great, Jason. Cool. Well, it was really great to talk with you, and yeah, have a good rest of your night. I'll probably see you at convention too,
Yes, you
actually,
will.
possibly.
All right.
Awesome. Cool. Have a good one.
So that was my interview with Michael Wilson. Thank you for watching. If you're on YouTube, thank you for listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you are watching on YouTube, this is also available on those platforms. If you're listening, I also have a video version on YouTube, which is Jason Sellers Politics is the channel. And you can follow me on Twitter at Jason Sellers MN. You can follow me on Instagram at MPLSJason. And on Blue Sky, I'm trying to post on Blue Sky more at Jason SEL. Thank you so much for watching or for listening, and I will see you next time. My next interview will be with incumbent Tom Olson, and then after that, Adam Schneider for the at-large seats, and then the District 1 interviews will be coming after that. Thanks. Bye.